Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of the Town of Richmond Select Board. We are here tonight to discuss pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic safety in the village. Today is June 24th, 2004. And Josh figured as long as he got the band back together, we'd do some housekeeping stuff too. So we do have some liquor licenses to approve tonight and also a purchase order. Before we begin with our warned agenda, would anybody tonight care to make a statement based on anything not presented on the agenda tonight? Okay. Josh, board, any additions, deletions, or modifications to tonight's agenda?
Just the purchase order at the end, I'd suggest.
So we will do that. Item 4? B4?
Or C.
C, that makes more sense. Okay. So I guess at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the liquor licenses.
Mr. Chairman, say what they are. Want to go ahead?
Not to move it, we talk, so.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the first and third class liquor licenses for Richmond Yacht Club doing business as Big Spruce. Should we include the one for Hatchet or is it a separate motion?
You can,
Same
I mean, there's no objections to either. You can do them both together.
for both Big Spruce and Hatchet.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have a second?
Adam? Bart, I'll second.
Thank you, Bart. Any discussion?
Well, just for the audience, first and third class licenses, a first class license is to serve beer and wine on site. A third class license is to serve spirits on site. So these are routine things that most restaurants in town have. A second class license is the permission to take things to go, and neither business is asking for that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote.
Bart, aye. Lisa, aye.
Adam, aye.
Jane,
And David, aye. They have been approved.
Yeah.
Want to sign those at the end?
You don't have to sign anything anymore.
We don't.
There's no paperwork, hasn't been for last year, I guess.
Oh,
But I understand for 20 years, there was paperwork.
yeah, I was
But it
getting ready to
changed.
sign.
Yeah.
Okay. So next, discussion of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic issues in the village. The geographic location of the focus for this discussion tonight is Bridge Street from the intersection with Route 2 south to the Bridge Street Bridge, the bridge that was green that we wanted to paint silver that ended up red. And the side roads off Bridge Street between Route 2 and the Bridge Street Bridge, and the municipal-owned parking areas off Bridge Street between Route 2 and the Bridge Street Bridge. Josh, did you want to lead up this discussion?
For something, please?
In a second.
Okay.
Sure. So this comes after a few discussions at select board meetings regarding village safety for bicycle, pedestrians, and vehicles. Did include a couple of items in the packet for the board and just to help guide this discussion this evening. The Richmond Bridge Street Complete Streets Corridor Study was recently completed by the Traffic Committee and CCRPC as a study of Bridge Street for complete streets, which is looking at total multimodal transportation in an area, and that was on Bridge Street. So that's been included. A lot of that kind of drove sort of the sidewalk project that was looking at how could we improve pedestrian safety, the sidewalk along the west side or the east side of the street. Then there was also a Richmond Street and Sidewalk Audit, which was produced by the Richmond Transportation Committee, which focused primarily a lot on Bridge Street in this area. So some issues and answers and possible solutions included in that. And we also have the Richmond Traffic Ordinance included in the packet, just as some reference for where are speed limits, stop signs, parking areas right now. And if there's any questions, we can go to the ordinance.
Thank you, Josh. So I guess first we want to talk about the issues before we talk about possible solutions.
Could I just for a second?
Yes.
Can I share?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you should be able to.
Okay. So I just wanted to take a second, and talk about the document that were just mentioned. From time to time, people hear, if you come to these meetings a lot, or if you're just really bored, you hear reference made to the Bridge Street Complete Streets Work Study. And this is 162 pages long, so I'm not anticipating anybody saying, hold on, I'm whipping through them. But this was produced by the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, the paid experts, as it were. And it starts with an assessment of some of the issues. You'll notice it talks about the gaps in sidewalks, the lack of safety at some of the intersections. It includes detail of crashes and so forth that have happened. But I'd want to emphasize this document was completed 2021. Okay, so it is not going to have the most recent crash data, but it's more, historical, what has been the case over the last several years. And then essentially, as it says, trying to continue to serve vehicular traffic while enhancing mobility for pedestrians and cyclists, enhancing safety, and of course, maintaining parking. Because if we get rid of parking in the name of the first two goals, our business is taken to the neck. We can't do that. So it's a juggling act. And so we're not by any stretch of the imagination going to go through this entire document tonight, because if you scroll through it quickly, you'll notice page after page of diagrams and maps and so forth. But if you're wondering, when we make reference to the Complete Streets Study, what the heck it is, it's publicly available on the town's website. It's also in the packet for this meeting. And if you do like reading about traffic and cycling safety and pedestrian safety, it is an interesting read.
Bart?
David, I have one comment, and it was difficult because the Hollywood Squares bar was kind of in the way for that. But drawing attention to what was defined as high crash locations, I think people might be surprised by a low number of crashes that would qualify as
That's
high
a good
crash.
point. Let me,
And it was somewhere,
yeah, I can bring that up just one sec. That's a good point. What's high to somebody, to one person, may not be high to another. So here in the introduction, there is an assessment, and again, 2021 data, as you can see in the second paragraph down here, gaps in the infrastructure. These are some of the things that drove our proposal to build sidewalks. But then you get down here to the bottom of page 1, and this is where we discuss high crash data. And you'll notice the report they're referencing is 2012 through 2016. There have been more recent versions of this. This is a report that the state prepares from time to time. And 3 injury crashes and 9 property damage crashes in the segment of Bridge Street between Pleasant Street and the south side of the bridge. This, however, qualifies it as a high crash area. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that a total of 12 crashes in the 2012-2016 area, nonetheless, in the eyes of the state, qualifies it as high crash. And then you continue on down, and the same is true. The 2015 through 2019, more recent data, 18 crashes along the Bridge Street corridor, 2 involving pedestrians. The 2 involving pedestrians occurred at night. 1 resulted in injury, 1 resulted in a fatality. So again, according to the state, this constitutes a high crash area. So I know there's a lot of discussion on Front Porch Forum about what constitutes a dangerous intersection or high crashes. I'm not dipping into that. I'm just saying this is the state's definition.
I do have reports for you where I have highlighted all the accidents on Baker Street from 2012 to 2024. I also have reports of the same accidents at the 4 corners on Cochrane Road, of which there have been 4 accidents in the same 2012 to 2024. And I have made copies for each of you to have.
Thank you. Oh,
Me all of a couple of hours to do.
Okay.
But it is all off the Department of Transportation.
and for the record, could you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Linda Langer, and I'm a 45+ year resident of the town of Richmond.
Thank you. You're gonna type up a list of,
So my plan was, we'll still do regular minutes that Duncan will do,
oh, okay.
but I was planning on doing like issues that we list. And then as people brainstorm solutions.
Thank you.
Doing that, so we'll have a document of issues and solutions, but not planning to really take down every minute until. Duncan does that. Does that work?
A lot of accidents.
Now, those are all the accidents for the entire town of Richmond
Oh, okay,
for the whole 12 years.
on the top page.
What?
Oh, I see, I got it.
And it's very small print.
And very small print, and I
Yes.
can give you all the data.
Yeah, this would be very useful to put on the town website for
Mhm.
If you would tell me who to send it to, I will have you.
Duncan or Josh.
Okay, we will do that.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of, more dates that have kids in there. But it is all from the Department of Transportation.
I'm grateful for this because if you know, this does come right up through 2024.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your site is always up to date. And I was able to find a person who gave me everything that I needed to know, and she gave it to me one day after I asked for it.
Wow.
Your tax dollars at work. Hey, if I go.
So if I could, David,
Yes.
this is helpful. Just if you haven't seen it, you'll note that it's every road in town, including I-89.
Yes,
So it is every road in the town of Richmond.
But in spreadsheet format, one could easily filter to whatever level of detail.
Yes.
one-
Mhm.
Flowbridge Street's broken out in this breakout.
Oh, which page is that?
No, it's just-
Oh, I don't think I got that. It's there. Thank you.
Yeah, you want to pass one of these around? I can share one if you want to pass them around. Everyone look at,
Sure. Yeah, so you
it's pretty dry.
I can get copies, I'm sure.
Glasses go with it.
Here's an extra one, right,
And-
Josh?
David, if I
John, do
could,
me a favor, spotlight me for a second.
How do I spotlight?
Go to my window,
Okay,
go to my Brady Bunch Square.
Go ahead.
Hover over it,
what do I have to do it from this computer?
probably so. And then the 3-dot thing, say spotlight for everyone.
No,
Okay, there we
look at that.
so I was gonna say, David, for better or worse, the scope of tonight's conversation was much more narrowly defined than the entire town of Richmond.
Okay, so I know that people really can't see this because no matter what I do, it's still blurry. But from 2012 through 2024, her data is that there have been 41 accidents, varying by year, and there have been none in 2023 and none so far in 2024. The trend does seem to be going down somewhat.
Sure does.
yeah.
Take a while to make it around.
Okay, now on spotlight me. No one needs to see my nose hairs.
So how did you want to generate the?
Well, my thought was that we could start by having people list out issues. Like, I think that the stoplight should have a longer green.
Your side.
I think it's dangerous to cross at Railroad Street. We could start a list of issues until we sort of exhaust that.
Okay,
And then we could go back through and say, okay, crossing a railroad street, possible solutions, and I can kind of go through and add those if that works for the board.
I'll just share, if I could, jump in with two that we have heard here. One is the whole Jolena Court, Richmond Market intersection and pedestrian safety, especially at night when it's dark or when it's raining or snowing. So that is something we've heard about on numerous occasions here. The other is, and this is sort of technical, what I understood in conversations with other folks about the left turn arrow at the Bridge Street intersection. As I understand it, it's currently at the end of the green cycle, and it was suggested by a former senior leader in the Agency of Transportation. It should be at the beginning of the green cycle, not the end, and that it should be longer duration. Because what it's intended to do is clear out people coming up Bridge Street towards the school in Burlington during rush hour in the morning, and that would be more effective.
and just
So that's both a problem
Or
and a solution.
What was your first one? Sorry, I was.
the
doing something else.
pedestrian crossing, Jolena Court,
Okay, okay.
Richmond Market, Railroad Street.
Just because we've had
Yep.
residents come here and talk to us about that in the past.
You did say at night, so we're going to crossing off over the station.
At night and
They
at
said
weather,
especially at night.
and when it's raining or snowing.
Thank you.
And Josh, you don't have to type this, but the traffic light at the intersection of Bridge Street and Route 2, we've been asking the state for years to address that, and the answer was we can't because that's an old light and we can't change it. That's changed. Now it's a new light and it's changeable. So as Bart discussed, there's an issue with the green arrow that can be modified.
And for what it's worth, I'll add that I'm told they have to come to the control box and do it.
Mhm.
Even though it's 2024, it is not something that can be done on an app somewhere else.
It might be, it's just not enabled.
It's not a month point.
That might be just during the construction point, okay. No.
Yeah.
I think they could do certain stuff remotely, but I know during the construction period, there's certain things that only the contractor can do, but
It may be time.
besides the point, we can figure it out.
Mary,
Yeah, very cool. At some point, are you folks going to address the flashing lights, the two sets of flashers? Woo-hoo.
Tonight. I mean, that's the whole point of this meeting, is to make a list
in the
of things like
crosswalks.
that.
Or,
The crosswalk
Yeah, yeah.
flashers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Add that to
I'd
the
be
list.
interested if there was any impact on the accidents since those had been installed. Thank you.
so we're generating a list of things to talk about tonight. Yes.
Rob Hens, I remember from the last meeting, we were talking about 2 meetings ago about the little plastic things.
Yes.
I've been like checking those out quite a bit now, from several cities since then, and I think that's a great idea. Because that would, flashing lights were mentioned, people kind of think that they got the right of way, and if there's a big vans in the way, they're not seeing a car coming flying down, thinking that turn off of Route 2. I think one of those niches crosswalks at the end of it would be perfect right in the
So
middle.
there's plastic lane dividers.
Yeah, with,
If you've been to the Burlington Airport and you're
exactly.
going through the crossway, when they're crossing from the terminal to the parking garage, or vice versa, there's an orange plastic thing in the middle of the road. Call your attention is that this is a crosswalk, and if you hit it at speed, you're not gonna wreck your car. It's kind of hard to overlook. And I don't remember what those are officially called,
I don't know.
Plastic thingies.
plastic thingies, but
Kara.
Carol Labonte. The lighting in this parking lot is,
Yeah.
terrible.
it's very unsafe to go out at. So I really would like to have the parking lot addressed. And I think that was, possibly why the fatality occurred is because of the lack of lighting, especially in the crosswalk areas. That's very important because if you want people to cross there, it should be there.
Josh, those things turn out to be called flexible delineators.
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 Yes.
Jared Katz, to Kara's point of lighting crosswalks, I'm curious if there is something already in existence that enables a light at the same time, and it illuminates a flashing light for the cross, which enables a
Oh, an illumination light.
that stays on for the duration of cross plus some, but isn't on 24/7 or isn't on throughout the night, which causes all kinds of problems.
I'd suggest putting that under the crosswalks, under the,
Automated illumination light.
The problem with that is people aren't always using their crosswalk flashers. I've seen people have their children run out before they even hit the button on that, and then, 6 to 8 feet behind the child is the parent. So if it's lit, we're gonna be more likely to see them if they haven't hit the button, is my only concern.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because I've seen that.
so other issues with this corridor. Yes.
Erin McGuire, I'm speaking on behalf of Amy Gifford, who can't be here tonight. She's on a mission trip with her family. This was feedback that we got from collecting signatures. The lighting along the existing sidewalk is insufficient, such that folks that live in town, when they walk at night, they have to bring an additional source of light, like a headlamp or other. So already along the sidewalk that's already there, that's insufficient. And also, the intersection where the Cumberland Farms is really, really rough. There's a light to assist pedestrians getting across Route 2, but then they have to navigate cars pulling in and out of all directions from every single part of that intersection. So that
This is the 4 crosswalks, the 2 are going across Route 2 and the
Correct.
one going across Bridge Street, the one going across.
And then you
Jericho.
can, and then Cumberland Farms is really tricky, right? Because then you have people coming in and out of that.
Find across. and cars are coming through and not even looking.
Right, right, so that's a major
Yeah,
pinch point, I guess.
Yeah.
nightmare.
That's another word for it.
Could I make a comment? My understanding is that that design and construction predated zoning, so
Yes.
they just.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Right,
If you're gonna do it over, you probably wouldn't do it the same way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Space.
Yeah.
Jack Lynn, I predate zoning too.
Your
grandfather did, Jack.
He's a liar.
When Cumberland Farms came in and replaced the old garage, believe it or not, there was a agreement with Cumberland Farms that they wouldn't use semis. I believe it was in the document, but that's just a little bit of history, because we're not gonna change that.
Angela?
Angela Cote, just a question about where the sidewalk is supposed to be, even though that is an ingress egress for Cumberland Farms, the business. Is it possible to paint that? To just like yellow, stripe that, the width of the sidewalk right through there, so that when cars are driving over that big, huge 4-foot wide strip of yellow, they know that they're actually
On the
in a
sidewalk.
place they need to be thinking. I don't know. Can we paint?
That's a good question.
It kind of depends on who owns it.
Yeah,
That's been the problem in the past is,
but that's still part of our right of way.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, it's in the town right of way. Bard?
I've heard several people say, along the same lines, more frequent and more obvious crosswalk paintings, like more than once a year, so they don't wear off and disappear. And then also what are called stop blocks. So you come to a stop sign, if you drive around the city, like Burlington, you notice many of the places, there's a stop sign and a white block that tells you that's where you're supposed to stop versus pick a place. So that might be a greater clarity in the built environment for both pedestrians and vehicles, that like you look at it and it kind of tells you what to do and where to do it.
Awesome. Heidi?
Eddie Gorman, one area that I've noticed, seeing people walking without a sidewalk, and I think I would recommend having the sidewalk painted, is on from Pleasant Street over to the dentist office on the south side, because you have NOFA, you have the bank, and you also have the residents on that area. They won't go to the north side, for whatever reason, which I understand, because then they would have to cross Depot Street. But I do think another painted side lines in the road to identify that there, because they do that every day to get their mail. That would be my recommendation.
That's from Pleasant Street to Depot Street.
Pleasant Street to Depot Street on the south side.
Josh, just when you're done with this.
Yep.
What's missing from my comments were better painting for crosswalks and then more frequent painting of both crosswalks and stop blocks. People in this room have said before, if you do it once a year, it wears out and
Right.
then.
The new paint that the highway department is using is supposed to be 2-year paint. It's what other towns have been using apparently, and we are starting to use.
This is our first year using.
What else was I missing? So I added the better and more frequent paint right there. And there was the stop bars.
Well, some of the crosswalks, I don't think are actually even painted at all.
Okay.
No. And one more thing, just to keep dumping on you faster than you can type.
On side streets.
I think I've heard 1,000 times that people are very timorous about using the eliminated crosswalk between the Big Spruce and Bridge Street Hare, because trucks, big pickup trucks, the kinds that
And SUVs.
and SUVs stick so far out that you could be sitting there pressing that and cars have no idea you're there because you're behind 10,000 pounds of Detroit steel.
Kara?
Just the idea of a Cumberland Farms painting that might be an issue, because there's actually parking spaces that people can pull in there, and one of them is handicapped. So like the UVM, when you go through UVM, you can see the brick version of the sidewalks to show that it's an actual sidewalk, but you can still drive over it. So you might have to look at changing the texture of the surface versus just painting the stripes, because you have parking spaces right there.
I want to jump feedback on our comment. The pedestrian still has the right of way.
Mhm.
they're in the sidewalk, they're in that 4-foot strip that is the town's right of way. And so any vehicle, whether they're a handicapped person trying to park or somebody trying to get to the pumps, needs to just be aware. That's all, situational awareness. The pedestrian has the right of way.
To jump on top of that too, Karina Himmel, when you have people parked in those parking spots, you actually have to walk into the road. So you often have children and parents with their strollers walking into the road with oncoming traffic. So it's a very precarious spot regardless of paint and bricks, but I think that really needs to be addressed because I think that is probably an exceptionally dangerous piece of.
It is.
And that was pointed out in one of those reports that's, you all have. Was even a photograph of your volunteers pointing that out. Sorry, yeah, Penny Rand, I live on Bridge Street. I see pedestrians and vehicular traffic. I've lived there for 25 years. And I can tell you that with the new sidewalk, it's been drastically improved because pedestrians are using it, which I think is wonderful. And it was really rough before. And I think there were people who actually didn't ride their bike on it at times. I think there are more kids now that are able to, little kids that are able to walk, and older people, and it's much safer, especially with that little median between the curb and the sidewalk, which is a little more space between the vehicles and the pedestrians. And I think that's really, really helped a lot. I can say that the main problem I see is cars still drive way too fast. Just way too fast. And the speed limit, I understand, is 25 miles an hour. And I believe the only 25-mile-an-hour sign is located between Cumberland Farms and the brick building, right near those parking spots by the Cumberland Farms. People cannot, I think it just blends in. And my suggestion would be to put a 25-mile-an-hour sign immediately after the entrance to the market.
Mhm.
So you go over the railroad tracks, and that next section is where they tend to speed up, because going down the hill, there's a lot of cars parked there. People tend to go pretty slow there. You go slow because they're going over the railroad tracks. Then there's the intersection, and right there between there and the park is where they speed up. And I rarely see anyone enforcing the speed limit there. And I think that's where, if there's to be an accident, that's where one might happen. My neighbor was killed on that, crossing the street there. And he was old and he had Alzheimer's, and he probably could have been in the street when he shouldn't have been, but nonetheless, it was someone who was driving fast. And yeah, I think the children and adults, we adults, I mean, things need to be improved, but we as adults are much more aware. I think what needs to be obvious is good pedestrian safety for children. There are so many families that go down to the park, and so many kids that walk to and from school and to the library. And those are the times of the days when it's busiest and when pedestrian safety needs to be the best.
David, I have a follow-up comment. I don't know how frequent this is, but literally about 35 minutes ago, I was coming along Route 2 to take a right onto Bridge Street, and a vehicle came down off the hill going well over 40 miles an hour. I've also seen bicycles come down the hill, and they're probably going 40 miles an hour into Bridge Street. So I think one of the challenges is people coming off the hill, they tend to carry their speed into the crowded part of town, even though they shouldn't be going that fast on the hill either.
25 all the way up.
I just observed that people are carrying their speed from up there when they come into sort of the town center area.
Aaron on Zoom?
Can you hear me, Aaron Farr? Okay. So some of the things I was going to mention have been mentioned. I think more speed limit signs and possibly changing the texture of some of the crosswalks. I think of that like the one that goes in front of the market. That might be a good spot to put a different textured crosswalk. And also what was just mentioned by Bard about the speed. I think speed is a big deal through there. We've seen it a few times with both vehicles and with bicycles. People going so fast, and I believe if you're a pedestrian, you have the right of the way to a bicycle. And I've seen a couple instances where we've been crossing the road, both at our house at the farm and in town, where bicycles did not stop for pedestrians. And I think, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do think that speed is a big issue, whether it's a car or a bicycle, in that area.
Josh, if you could modify the earlier, the one above that, vehicles travel too fast, it's bicycles as well. It's vehicles and bicycles.
Yes, one that Rob hits. I just want to second the motion. I've been religious about the speed limit lately for different reasons, but going up the hill or down the hill, if I go 25, which I do, or sometimes 26, 27, because you know, whatever, I have 3 or 4 or 5 cars behind me, like pissed. Okay, and I'm like, I'm doing the speed limit. Like, come on. I mean, Costello's a bitch. Like, I don't want to get, you know, like he's like 5 miles over, he'll pull you over. So it's like, you know, I'm just trying to do, and so it's definitely a problem, especially coming down the hill, you know. It's a school zone. There's kids on the sidewalks. It's like, yeah, there's a little extra road, you know, median there for grass, but it's still, you know, I found that being a big problem. And as someone else said, once you hit the railroad tracks, people zoom there too, to the bridge and over and then up around that corner, past Stone Corral.
Alan on Zoom?
Alan Knowles, I live on East Main in the village, and I walk and bicycle these streets frequently, often in company of a toddler or with pushing a baby carriage. At the US 2 Bridge Street intersection, a major problem is cars doing right on red in spite of the pedestrian having a walk signal. They did not put up the no right turn signs that light up when there's a pedestrian that you see, such as the intersections in Williston. If you put the left turn green from Bridge Street left onto US 2 at the beginning of the cycle, the pedestrian has about a 7-second head start before the light turns green, and that'll give the pedestrians, and that's where the kids cross, just about time to get out in the middle of the lane before the driver who's champing at the bit hits the gas. So I would advocate that staying at the end of the cycle for that reason. The mid-block crossing in the business district on the west side where the business needs a bump out, because as people have mentioned, the SUVs and the pickup trucks park there, and you've got to walk, you know, 20 feet out and poke your head out around there before you can see if anything's coming. We need a bump out, and the rapid flashing beacon needs to be put out at the end of the bump out so it's in the driver's line of sight. And then the main thing, because speed is in fact the issue, is all of the crosswalks should be put on speed tables. They don't need to be big bumps. They just to be enough to people know that there's a speed table there, and it makes the crosswalks much more visible, and it slows people down. Right now, really the only reason that Bridge Street is at all walkable and bikeable is the railroad tracks and the bridge, which slow people down some. Let's see. I think, is that enough? Yeah, we talked about that. That'll do me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alan.
I have a clarifying question, Alan. So when you say all the crosswalks, could you clarify what you mean? Did you mean at the Route 2 Bridge Street intersection and then down Bridge Street? I'm presuming you didn't mean every crosswalk in town.
No, I don't think that the state would let us put speed tables across US 2. I wish they would. But no, I meant the mid-block crossing, the crossing by Jolena Court, the crossing in front of the library, the crossing in front of Town Center, and the crossing up at Round Church.
Thank you, Alan.
this is technically outside what we can do because it's not in the downtown area. But the elephant in the room is that there's only one way to get from the north side of the river to the south side of the river, unless you go all the way down to Cochrane Road. Kenyon Road, from time to time, people have proposed paving it so it can be used as a bypass. But I mean, that's not, I'm not saying whether that makes sense or not, but as long as people see downtown as a place to get through really quickly because they're going somewhere, and not as a place they live in, it would be interesting if we were to actually do a study of how many people speeding at excessive speeds are not, I mean, there's no way to do it because Richmonders have green plates, people from Huntington have green plates. But how many people going through town don't have Vermont plates?
You look at traffic ticket data.
We could look at traffic ticket data, but that's the problem, is it's a throughway for people as opposed to a place that they live and work. And that's a very hard point of view. That's a very hard perspective to alter because people want to get where they're going.
Quickly. Heidi?
Maybe another solution would be, you know, when you see the police sign that says how fast you're going, and we have that right in the center of town that says, hey, look, you're speeding. You know, it is a bit of a deterrent when people do see that. And maybe that's something that we can think about potentially doing for a month or two and trying to calm that down.
Right, as you're going into Heinsberg on Richmond Road, it's right there as you're going into town.
Right.
And it's very obvious. We bought a bunch of those speed signs and the manufacturer we bought them from has not stood behind them.
Yeah.
We need to get a different manufacturer if we were to go with that.
I'm also just going to speak up that more signs isn't always the answer. We have a lot of signs, we already have a lot of signs. If you put a sign up, you want people to see the sign. If you have a lot of signs, people aren't going to see any of the signs. I'm just going to say that. There's still people who live here, including myself and a lot of other people. This is a very special part of town. This is not Williston Road. More lights are not needed. I can assure you, if you come out in the middle of the night and stand on Bridge Street, look up, you need your sunglasses on. So come walk it in the middle of the night. Maybe the crosswalks need some more light, but more signs, more lights, more everything is not necessarily going to make it safer. We need to slow down the traffic and make a good place for people to walk.
Chief
And
Cambridge?
identify that space.
Thanks, Penny. Chief Cambridge?
Hi, one of the things I was gonna say is that the speed signs, as much as they slow people down, people try to run them. See how fast they can go. Even when we shut them off, it seems like people are trying to get their speed up. What's that?
New high score.
Exactly. The other thing I was gonna say in response to crosswalks and lighted or something that attracts attention, which I really don't like. Do we want flashing lights all over town? One of the things I'm in favor of is, as opposed to a raised speed bump at crosswalks, sort of like cobblestone faux, something that you could put there that looks like you're coming into something, but it's not actually something. Like an actual walkway. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that.
Yeah.
It's like stamped bricks in a lot of places.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not multi, but I just wanted to kind of on that street sign, and that's, people are people. They're gonna keep doing what they normally do. And I think what it boils down to is we need more police presence around here. In town, not just in town, but all of Richmond. And I know Chief was something that we're got through Heinsberg is working on that, but we just need more police presence. Slow people down. That's what I'm saying.
Morgan on Zoom?
You're muted, Morgan.
Morgan, while you're trying to unmute, Chief Cambridge, your hand is still up. Did you have something else to say?
Yes, just keep in mind, and I mean, no matter what the status of the department is, we are doing the best we can, but keep in mind that Richmond is 40 square miles. When you think about how many officers a town like Bristol has, I think it's like 4. Virgins has, I think they're 5 officers right now. They're both a little over 1 square mile, and we're 40. I mean, just the town of Richmond is 40. So it becomes really difficult when we're trying to hit hotspots to hit all of those different hotspots that, you know, people complain about speeding and they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's some pretty far out places in Richmond and in Heinsberg as well. So just kind of keep that in mind as well, that it is a very big area to cover.
Good point. Thank you. Did we lose Morgan?
He probably is disconnecting and joining back in.
Okay.
Knowing him.
David, there's a lady who lives better than up for.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brady Katzman Rooks. I live on Church Street, so I drive that regularly. Something that I think is a big problem is, and was mentioned previously, the big trucks and the larger extending vehicles that literally come out into the driving lane when they're parked in front of the shops between the light and the next street, at the corner where the dentist is.
Yeah.
That row, even if, you know, especially the ones on the 2 ends of that and near the intersection, if those could be labeled as, you know, compact cars only and ticketed if they're not, that would be great. A good source of revenue, perhaps. But I really think, and you know, stopping the large vehicles parking along there, I know that might cause problems with people who have larger vehicles, but there are other alternatives around.
The Depot Street lot, for example.
Yeah, and so I think that could help in terms of visibility and especially at the crosswalk. And that's been a problem. And then my other points, the speed limit is often exceeded along that stretch when I'm coming out. And sometimes I think that there's quite a distance from the next vehicle and they're flying up the road a lot faster than 25. It is dangerous at times, and I've honked my horn to stop when there are pedestrians and they just don't see, and they're at risk of hitting somebody, especially when traffic is stopped going up toward the light. So that is the people coming down when the traffic is stopped in the mornings, going up to wait to turn left and it backs up to the bridge. The other people coming down the hill just come flying down through. They don't realize that there might be somebody crossing right here at this crosswalk. And I've seen numerous times where that has been a problem. They just don't see the people coming out between the cars to cross the street. I like the idea of some sort of a speed bump right there, you know, to sort of slow people down a little bit at that crosswalk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Morgan, looks like you're back in your hands up. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry about that. Technology got the best of me there. No, I want to really back up what a lot of people have said. The crosswalks, like when I walk down to meetings at the town center there, and you get to that crosswalk in particular, as many people said, there are individuals that are not paying attention or think that pedestrians don't have the right of way. And I believe, like Alan had mentioned, a speed table would help, I think. I know it sounds like some people do not like that, but we're talking about injuring individuals. So anything to get people to remember that it is a crosswalk and to slow down. I'd mentioned in a previous select board meeting that when over New Hampshire, they had just cut grooves in the road and they spaced them apart maybe 2 feet, and then as you got closer, a foot apart. And that little bit of sound also wakes people up that it may be less maintenance or more maintenance free, so to speak. But my biggest point I want to make is, unfortunately, the Cumberland Farms, and the big trucks there, I mean, those guys have to make a living. They have nowhere else to unload their trucks. I find it really unfortunate that I have to walk out on Bridge Street in traffic to get around the trucks. It seems like it's the tail wagging the dog, so to speak, that we have to do that. And on a dark morning in the wintertime when they're unloading their vehicles there, that it presents an additional endangerment to individuals that have to cross it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Rod?
Thank you, David. I'd like to get back to the elephant in the room here, which we haven't talked about yet. And it was extensively addressed in the complete road study from 2021. We're talking a lot about crosswalks. We're not talking much about the sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street. I did read the first 30 odd pages and looked at the notes, and I have very mixed feelings about spending $250,000 on a sidewalk over there. But a lot of what we're talking about is people crossing the road, and that was intended and well thought out of helping people to not have to cross the road. And I think we might want to chat about that a little bit tonight. It's a big project. It has a lot of impact, but it turns out the way it was drawn is it's mostly intended to use roadway, not to take away from the property owners so badly. I know there's big concerns in front of the community kitchen. There's concerns the whole distance, you get right down to it. But it is something that I think we should address tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jeff Forward. I want to support what Rod said. I think there's the sidewalk on, what is it, the east side? It's the east side, right?
East side.
It is something that's been on the table for quite some time, and has had a lot of public input. And I think many of these questions were raised in that original complete street study. As far as the trucks at Cumberland Farms, one of the things that we did at the school district, there was issues about delivering wood chips to a school during school hours. Right? So you don't want a tractor trailer driving through a school parking lot when the kids are there or parents are dropping kids off. And so the school district requires chip suppliers to come in before 6 o'clock in the morning or after school hours late at night. And that's how it's bid out. It seems to me that you could make a requirement for Cumberland Farms to no deliveries after 7 o'clock in the morning, because the street is well used from 7 o'clock on the rest of the day. So that could be, that might be an ordinance. I think about it.
I think you're opening up yourself to a lawsuit in that situation. I really think we have enough lawsuits in our history right now. So I don't really recommend putting restrictions. I mean, you can talk to them and try to work with them. There's a big difference between that and then putting something restricting their business. We're going to talk about businesses on the intersection there. Lumiac has their van, their school bus there parked right on the sidewalk coming down from Campbell Salt Middle School. I'm very thankful that the Heinsberg police officer was in town to be able to go over and talk to him because he was out of the school bus and had walked all the way over to Blue Spruce area and was on the sidewalk standing over there while the bus was parked on top of the sidewalk. So there is a need, we all know that, for law enforcement. So we have to find solutions without law enforcement because we have had it without it for so long. And I go back to the UVM crosswalks. There's many students crossing those crosswalks. Those are not tables as far as coming up in speed bumps. They're actually in the ground, but you feel the vibration when you go over it. The one thing that you have done as a select board is you've decided to put speed bumps on Cochrane Road to deal with Cochrane Road. And so you've sent the truck traffic through town.
Because trucks with trailers are now more prevalent going through the village than going over the 6 speed bumps, speed tables that you put on Cochran Road. So I'm not saying, I'm just observing that, because having gone across the bridge, meeting a truck with a trailer on it, it was like, whoa, taking your half out of the middle, and you can't yield and get on the bridge when you don't know there's a truck and trailer on the bridge. So I'm just letting you know, we are going to have to deal with some issues in the village because we're sending more traffic through the village by the changes we've made to Cochran Road.
Thank you, Kara. Mary?
Yeah, Mary Hull, thank you. If there's any anticipation of making consideration for delivery before or after, you're gonna have to do it for the whole town, because you will be sued up, down, left and right if you signal out one business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else? Yes.
Exactly, and I'd like to confirm this lady's point, and I do drive big vehicles. But if they park in along Bridge Street there, it limits traffic, it limits visibility a lot. And I don't know the legalities of it, but you could make a limit of a vans or lengths or something like that. That does make a big difference on that road.
Talking about the angle parking at the top of Bridge Street?
Yeah.
Yep. Anybody else?
And Jay, you even mentioned if the bike racks on the back and make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do. They do.
And the fact that they don't pull all the way to the curb.
Yeah.
Jared Katz again. I'm a big fan of stutter strips, the rumble strips, before intersections of any sort. And as a cyclist, I do come down Bridge Street past the school, Jericho Road past the school, and routinely I'm going the speed limit or a mile or two above the speed limit and have cars coming right up on top of me, and I delight in slowing them down to the speed limit because I'm kind of a jerk that way. But I think there could be rumble strips before pretty much all of the intersections that the town owns, where people are often having to come to a full stop. I think it's very important those rumble strips not be something that is going to damage either a vehicle or a bicycle. So the big 2-inch cutouts wouldn't really work, but textured surface certainly would. I do think that calling attention to the approach of an intersection does bring people to a more reasonable speed.
I was driving my father's old 46 Cadillac through the White Mountains last summer in an antique car tour. We're somewhere up in the White Mountains. And before each crosswalk in this town, there was a series of rumble strips. So when the car went over, it would go, so you knew you were getting close.
They're all over the world.
They are. They're very common in Europe.
Yeah.
Newark.
They do.
Anybody else? Yes.
Kathleen Jent, on East Main Street, thankfully the road crew has gotten the curbs installed. And I wondered what the schedule is for getting the sidewalks completed. And because I don't think right now that the sidewalks have been installed. It's
Yes, just the curb.
I don't know if Pete's on the call with us, but I know he put the curb in to coordinate with the paving of Route 2. And I don't know when this summer, but it is this summer. He's planning on doing the concrete work.
great because obviously being able to walk on the sidewalks, having new great sidewalks on East Main would be really helpful. And there has been a pattern for quite a few years where cars park on the sidewalks. And I'm hoping with the new curb cuts and the new sidewalk that will no longer happen, or if it were to happen, that police enforcement could be done on those, because it really made the sidewalks pretty unsafe.
I think the curb prohibits that pretty well, but yes, be aware of it.
Alan Knowles on Zoom.
Hey, this is Lynn. I'm Alan's wife, and I wanted to go back to the sidewalks on the east side of Bridge Street. And because I think it's very important, I walk that daily, and we have to cross the street twice to get to the library town hall area, because you have to go across at the flashing light and then you have to cross back again. So if we had sidewalks all the way down, that would eliminate one of my crossings. Plus, anyone coming off of Pleasant Street has no option but to go through the bank parking lot or to cross on that dangerous corner where there's no crosswalk or any way to get across there. So I just want to put my 2 cents in again for the sidewalk on that side. I think it's very important.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Keith Jennings, member of the perhaps mortally wounded Transportation Committee. There's been a few discussion points. I'll try to weigh in on general things. One, we've talked a lot about paint and signs. The transportation engineering and design literature, the studies that have been done across many cities are pretty clear that about the only thing that will slow down traffic is actual built infrastructure. So that could be islands, that could be bump outs, that could be speed tables or raised crosswalks. Most people are saying speed tables, but I think in most cases, what we would want on Bridge Street at the non-intersection crossings would be raised sidewalks, not speed tables. And I live over on Turnstone Lane off of Kenyon. And so I've been doing a windshield study every time I go through the 117 and Route 2 intersection where all that new great paint is. Again, small sample size here, but I have not seen a single car turning from 2 going west onto 117 just drive completely through the painted section. So there's no, paint does not stop vehicles. The only thing that stops vehicles from hitting pedestrians is built infrastructure. So separated sidewalks, islands, bump outs, etc. So if the point is pedestrian safety, there's really only one solution. And I think the only reason we're debating all these other lesser solutions is cost. So that's
Just a responsive point of clarity, when I'm talking about the painted crosswalks and the stop blocks, it's on the ends of the streets that come into Bridge Street.
Right, so I was also referring.
There's already a stop sign.
Yeah, to painting a sidewalk, so things like that. Painting was also given as a solution to which I know is outside the scope of this, but as the Thompson, Huntington Bridge, Cochrane intersection, that was given a solution. So I just wanted to throw out there that paint doesn't stop cars.
Jeff?
So we haven't discussed much about the Thompson Road route church. Is that on?
It's out of scope as defined in the meeting.
The other side of the bridge.
Agenda.
Yeah, Virginia Clark from the Planning Commission, and I just wanted to weigh in a little bit also on the East Bridge Street sidewalk. So currently, the Jolena Court development of Buttermilk is planning to introduce their second building. The first one is there with the 14 units. There will be a number of additional units in that second building. There will be a number of additional people coming, walking. So if people are interested in not having any more crossings than you absolutely need across Bridge Street, then the idea would be to have a sidewalk on that side. So the more crossings you have, the slower the traffic has to go, which is possibly a good thing. It's a traffic calming device. People crossing the road, as long as they don't get hit. But if you want to keep some of those people walking on that side who are going to the library, the town center, who might be, walking up towards East Main Street or beyond, then, so I'd be interested to, I understand there's been pushback about that sidewalk, but it certainly has been on the books for a long time. It's been in the town plan for a long time. And we now have an additional reason, which is to help reduce the number of crossings. So
I don't know how to say this, but I sort of wish the people that are talking pro sidewalk had showed up at the meeting when we talked about the sidewalk and heard overwhelming statements from opponents. And at the time, deafening silence from proponents. So I'm not averse to bringing it back up again, but I'll just say, we've talked about it at a previous select board meeting. And so it's difficult to be here and go around, and I totally understand it. Maybe it's worth going around it and resurrecting it again, but it's awkward having had this conversation several times. I don't know where it leaves us at this point in time.
Bart, thank you. I'll second that because I don't live in the village. So everything I hear about this, I have to hear from other people. And if, as Bart says, we have a meeting, we've got 90% of the people speaking against the sidewalk, that's what I hear. And, you know, we need people who have skin in the game essentially to come speak here.
With a
Or-
petition signed by more than
100%.
200 people. That's an unusual event. I think it's unprecedented in my experience on the select board, for what that's worth.
Good point.
I think you, then Kara, then Heidi.
I just got one comment. Sidewalk, in my mind, can go either way, but 90% of the businesses are on the west side. You're gonna get everybody, for the most part, crossing the street. Why put in 250 million or 250,000, sorry, dollars for a sidewalk that very few people are gonna travel on because 90% of your businesses are on the other side of the street?
We're going to be getting into the meat of everything on this list as far as discussing pros, cons, ideas, but we're still generating that list now, just trying to focus. Kara?
I just want to go to Virginia's comment about them putting in their second building and having more pedestrian traffic, et cetera. They have the ability in their designs to have sidewalks come to the town center parking lot to come that way. We don't have to disturb the cemetery due to the fact that a developer is developing their parcel and has access. If they design it correctly, it's all about planning and designing. They could actually have sidewalks that go from the town center parking lot to their property and out around. So that would give another area for pedestrians to be able to walk.
Thank you. Heidi?
I'm going to speak on behalf of the cemetery commission. So we did come to the meetings multiple times, and the concern was with this cemetery out here that there are actually human remains potential on the outside of where that
Likely.
sidewalk would be put, and that they would be put over the or under the cemetery. And so we asked for a scoping for them to come out and be able to see. We thought we were going to be able to see bones and whatnot. That was not the case. And the study showed, or the expert said that they would not be able to see 100% if there were or not.
Right.
But that would be a huge liability and issue for the commission. The commission actually voted on it, and we were 100% opposed to the sidewalk on that side because of the human remains potential.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes. Oh, hang on. Yes. Go ahead.
Where are we going?
So go ahead.
Or just briefly, maybe revisiting the sidewalk issue with the context of traffic calming by bringing the sidewalk more into the street, narrowing the street, which I think is supported by studies from Madison, Wisconsin, and Cleveland, Ohio, and I can't think of other cities that have done it, but typically narrower streets result in traffic calming. They're a pain in the neck.
Just to follow up, for the record, that is what the Agency of Transportation did on Route 2. You may not have noticed, but the lanes are narrower than they used to be, and that is one of the known traffic calming measures.
Hi, just wanted to share a quick experience about walking through the village, as I do every single day. Sometimes it's really hard to get down Bridge Street. I love our businesses. They're wonderful. I support them. Sometimes there are so many people sitting out and planters that if you are a person with mobility issues, there's a wheelchair cut out and you literally kind of dip down into that as you're trying to get through. I say, excuse me, sometimes to people so that I can pass. We have a lot of traffic on the lovely busy street.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I'll say one more thing. I think there's like an interesting, it's like very vague solution, but is like relating to the like lane narrowing, not wanting signs is, I always think of like driving through some of those towns in upstate New York where they have, I think there's a few where they have like World War II veteran like memorials hanging on each.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I always think, and like just coming through Richmond, when there's like a 4th of July or whenever we have things that are kind of beautifying flags is like, that's an easy, like, I think those type of like, whether it's gardens or flags or like that type of beautification, like has the effect of slowing traffic down. And I think that's like an interesting solution, like kind of way approach, I guess, of like dealing with some of that, that I think, I don't know, maybe somebody hates it, but I think people like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of a positive way.
Anybody else? Yes, Jeff.
So, I understand the power of coming to the select board with a multi-hundred petition, on any particular issue. However, the flip side of that is that these sidewalks have been discussed for many years and are in multiple studies. I'm wondering if it would be useful to take the temperature of the town at large. Because while I don't live in the village, I use the village a lot. I feel like the village is part of my experience in Richmond. And that I have an opinion on using sidewalks in Richmond. So I'm wondering, we have several elections coming up. We have a primary coming up in August, and we've got a general election in November. I'm wondering if there could be a question on the ballot as an informational question that clearly it could not be, it would have to be, it couldn't be binding, it would have to be informative. But I wonder if it would be useful to the select board to hear from a wider audience than one petition.
Heidi?
Got a question in regards to the sidewalk on the east side. What did the railroad have to say in regards to the Transportation Commission?
As far as crossing the railroad?
I mean, there are people from the Transportation Commission here, correct?
Oh, yeah, Keith again, I believe Chris Cole was coordinating to them. So I can play game telephone, but my recollection was that there were certain rules about how close a sidewalk could come to the railroad and its right of way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put a number on what those distances are because I wasn't involved in that coordination, but
yeah,
it is as I
know it was an issue. I can't remember what the solution was or the path was.
David, our parking advisory committee's been wrestling with the railroad about some railroad ties and so forth. I think they have some current information on just what he's talking about.
I think it's in the complete streets, those plans.
Any other things we should put on the list before we talk about the list? Yes.
Yeah, I live on West Main Street and I have 2 young kids and live in a neighborhood with lots of other young kids. And the fact that there's no barrier between Route 2 and the sidewalk on the north side is quite scary for me as a mom of 2 little kids. So that would be an area either whether or not we could like put some sort of crosswalk across Route 2, which probably is something that the state won't allow, but having some sort of barrier between that sidewalk. I always try to cross the other side of the road, but that in and of itself is also dangerous. So it's just kind of it's not very walker friendly and there are so many kids in the neighborhood.
David, one follow-up comment to that. I've also heard from people who live in that area and have observed it. When I pull out from Baker Street and start going 30, similar to Jared's story, I have a parade behind me.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are wanting to go 40 or 45. And so to your point, if you're walking on a sidewalk with not much separation between yourself and a car going 40 or 45, it's somewhat daunting. So that's another just speed problem.
Yeah, same thing coming up the hill into town. People are flying.
Yeah. Kara?
I think the other area that I think Pete is on Pete's list is the West Main Street actual sidewalk because it's uneven and broken up like around the Catholic Church area and to the intersection. I think it's supposed to be on the list to be redone because it's not.
I think it's next summer.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out that if we're talking about pedestrian safety, that sidewalk has to be updated.
Anything else for our list?
I would just encourage you to think about, I know we're talking about traffic, but ultimately we're talking about it in relation to pedestrian safety. And so thinking about where pedestrians are going to and from in terms of, obviously we don't need to have a study, but I'm just think about where people are traveling on foot. Not just where they're crossing the street, but where are the majority of the people going and when they're going there and the ages of the people. Again, that probably wouldn't require a study, but to really keep that in mind. Because as someone who lives right on Bridge Street, I see different times of the day. It's mostly families and children, I would say, that do a lot of the walking in town. And there are obviously other people who are running and walking in the morning, but that's wonderful. But in terms of keep that in mind as you start thinking of solutions.
Thank you, Patty. Yes.
Yeah, one more point on young people walking to and from places up to the school is very dangerous too, I think. Like I actually try to not walk that way. I walk back through the woods because I don't really love being on that road with my kids as people fly into down Jericho Road into the light. I've talked to several parents that's a big concern for them. So just the traffic going up to school when people are doing drop off is pretty nuts. So I think if we can try to get more people walking, more kids biking, that would make everyone have less traffic. And it would also, it's just a good lifestyle thing for the children. And it feels very dangerous. It's so easy for a kid to get distracted and run off quickly, and cars are just coming down there too quickly. So I don't think there's a school zone light or anything, but I mean, again, it's a 30-mile-per-hour zone or 25-mile-per-hour zone, but people are going way faster than that. And it is very scary.
Just to follow up on that, there has been some really good outreach in Front Porch Forum to help remind people about slowing down and about crosswalks. And I think it's been talked about before, where the public awareness campaign and the poster contest that was just done, the more that can be brought to people's attention regularly, the importance of slowing down and being aware of the different kinds of travelers that we have in our midst is really important. So that I don't know what the town could do formally, but I think that would be really helpful to have some kind of a ongoing, regular communications where we're really asked to think about each other as travelers would be really helpful. And just to follow up on question about the railroad and whether the railroad had been contacted about the east side. I don't think so. Part of the reason Chris Cole on the transportation committee, it's not raised. There wouldn't be a raised sidewalk right at the railroad. And one of the activities that the engineering firm was going to do was to be in contact with the railroad and working out with the railroad how the sidewalk would work. So because there's not an engineering study being done right now, I don't know if that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
But to note, Rob Hens, on the way down, coming down Jericho Road into town, there is a 25-mile-an-hour blinker that's busted.
Oh, it is.
Speaking of, I mean, on sunny days it works sometimes.
It's very, very old.
Yeah, but very rarely, like maybe once, in the middle of summer it'll come on, but in general, I don't feel like it's a speed marking situation. It's just people don't care. They just want to get where they're going.
Are we entering the solution phase of our
Yes.
discussion? So
Sorry.
it seems to me that one of them is to replace the defunct deteriorated signs to the degree they obviously are not effective if they don't work. Another thing that I thought of, and I don't know if Chief Cambridge is still here, when I was putting two and two together, a combination of the built environment and enforcement, it might be prudent to prioritize enforcement like of Jericho Road and the intersection during the school pedestrian commuting time.
Yeah.
When kids are walking up and down, because that's what, about 45 minutes at each end of 2 parts of the day. And it might help to have even just a uniformed officer standing around at the intersection with a car parked somewhere nearby might have some kind of effect. I don't know.
I know they used to do that close to a school.
I'm aging myself, but we used to have a cross guard.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember that walking school bus, remember the walking school bus?
So
The cops came and sat in their
volunteers
cars
and
and
maybe
maybe
someone that would be interested in doing something like that.
I just have to make sure it wouldn't be somebody who would let the power go to their head.
I know.
I want to go back briefly to the flexible delineators. We talked about putting one in the middle of the road like at the airport, which I think is a good idea. I've been my number one worry is the area by the market, because there's no true sidewalk there. And when there's snow on the ground, there is literally no sidewalk. It just looks like the road. When we first started paying attention to the area, we put barricade barrels up there to make it obvious.
And a light.
And a light. And now we just have this painted area, but there's no barrier. Flexible delineators along the edge of that, they look a little tacky, it's true, but I'd rather have tacky than have people afraid to walk to the market because there's no sidewalk visible at all.
Or worse.
Josh, I don't know if you captured this when you're done with that. I don't know if you captured the crossing guard idea.
I put it under the intersection of Route 2.
Okay.
I think that's a really important place to have something. I am really not in favor of having our town look like a construction zone all the time with reflecting things. I think there's much prettier ways to do it. I really like his idea of, you look at Europe, you can put something there with,
Raised beds.
a hauled out, a raised bed. You can have a log that's, dug out with some flowers, and those look really nice. If a car would hit it, it's not gonna kill the car, it's gonna separate it out. I think there's much prettier ways to do it.
It's called a beautiful delineator.
Right.
What's that?
It's called a beautiful delineator.
Yeah.
It's a reason I'm talking about something a little less technical there. It's because that railroad street is privately owned. The town doesn't own it. And the area there where there's no true sidewalk, where it's just lines painted, is because the person who owns that land did not want us to put in a true sidewalk. And that's their right. But that's the reason why putting in planters and so forth, which I think would look great, would probably be opposed for the same reason that we were not allowed to build an actual sidewalk.
Well, we could try.
We could try.
And it depends on
They
it might
don't
depend on where the right of way is too, because only part of that crosswalk / sidewalk area is on private land and part of it is on the town right of way. So those delineators, I think, would be fully in the town right of way.
Okay.
The issue there is, again, the 18-wheelers that are pulling in and out of there for
Turning
and
Yeah.
turning
Turning
radius.
radius, for sure.
But it still could happen right after the railroad
It
tracks for a
could.
few.
And part of that is privately owned.
Yes.
I didn't know that, I don't think this is already there, but at that traffic light, if there could be just a pedestrian only, all traffic stopped red light from all directions, pedestrian crossing with the loud, beeping pedestrian time. So everybody walks at the same time and then traffic is going because, and there are intersections around the state that have that set up. It's just a little bit safer. Everybody is stopped. They have some of those in Burlington and South Burlington. I think they're safer. Pedestrians have a very clear right of way and all the traffic is stopped. They don't have to look over their shoulder to see if somebody's turning. And I think that could help with safety measures.
And notably including the audible signal, which we've raised before, but I don't think it's
It needs to be louder.
improved yet.
Lighting in this parking lot, I don't care what you do for it. I don't care if it's downcast, if it's, you said something, Jay, at one meeting said something about being ground lit. I don't care what you do for lighting in this parking lot, but you need to do something. Like the light right at the drop mailbox over there is now shaded completely by the tree because it has all its leaves on it. So I just don't think it's a public parking lot that you want us to be here into the dark evening and it's not safe.
But only when people need to be in the building. Doesn't need to be on all night.
Right.
Oh, I'm not suggesting, yes, I agree. I don't care when you turn it on or off, but if you're gonna have a meeting that's gonna last until 11 o'clock at night, and those of us who do actually stay until 11 o'clock at night, I'm not gonna get hurt going in my car.
Yes.
I hear a lot of good ideas, but my mind, I'm in the construction business. There's a lot of maintenance involved with a lot of things, and that's where I'm going with a lot of this. Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas being put out there, but town also has to put in plan for maintenance for whatever we do. Because it's not gonna be cost effective if you're not gonna maintain it. Like the lights going, not working, the paint's not being updated online. You gotta have some sort of plan for the maintenance of whatever we do.
Good point.
So I have a question, Virginia Clark, I have a question about kind of process for doing some of these things. Is there a place in the budget that is for improvements like pedestrian bike improvements? Is there an amount of money that's in there?
We have a lot of lines in the budget, like the town center fund, so lighting would come out of that. We have a sidewalk fund, we have, there are a lot of lines in the budget where these could be plugged in.
There's also traffic calming, which I think is $10,000.
We also have signage, police.
And are those being used? I mean, it seems like a problem often comes up when we have these ideas, but then the funding comes up and everything shuts down. So if we had an amount in the budget that was for improvements, and we could argue about in the beginning how much that should be, let's say $50,000 were put in the budget. And then we have this list that comes from all these great studies that get put on the shelf that nothing ever happens with. We'd have a list of these solutions that we're generating and the ideas that come out of the studies. And we would decide, okay, we're going to spend $50,000 this year on helping pedestrian safety bit by bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna knock off this item. And we could have that discussion again, at some point, and the priorities would be different, but at least the money part would be decided, and if there was something that took 2 years worth, maybe we would come to the decision that we're going to save up this year's bike ped improvements and add it to next year's.
Yeah, there's no one line in the budget, but there are a lot of lines that do have this already.
Right, but does it function?
So can I jump in? So we had this conversation with Chris in transportation, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and we started to build it into the budget.
Yeah.
And a reminder, these are not 2-year cycles, they're more like 5-year cycles. Because from scoping to engineering to bidding to construction is about 5 years. And the front end is heavily subsidized by the Regional Planning Commission, which uses state and federal money on these planning and scoping sorts of things. So we had started to go down this path. It was clear somewhere in there, some number of years ago, that we had sidewalks that we didn't have an ongoing maintenance plan for. You'll remember that some of our sidewalks, they put them in. 20 years later, they're falling apart, but there's no budget. So we did start doing that. But then, it really takes persistence over a period of time. And I'm going to call it 5 years because that's about what it is from plan to final implementation and construction. And so you have to stick with it. With the vagaries, as you just observed earlier about the one part of a sidewalk, we're well down the path to a sidewalk, so to speak. And then it comes up that there is a very significant opposition to that sidewalk. Why didn't it come up earlier? I frankly think it's because some of our citizens, right or wrong, pay attention when it comes to, something's going to happen, and it comes up at the select board, not at one of the advisory committees or advisory groups. That's just what it looks like to me.
So now we have a bunch of things from all these scoping studies. So cannot we now have
implementation
Mhm.
phase of
Virginia,
these ideas?
they'll need to be ranked. I mean, we want to work on the worst, the hardest ones first, or the worst ones worst, or whichever, but.
Well, I think there's also some kind of easy ones.
Easy ones too.
Big bang for buck.
Big bang for buck, right?
Mhm.
And also maybe being proactive, but not just always reacting to a problem, but
Yeah.
it's okay. Well, I mean, it's a planning thing. It's kind of a planning tool.
Hey, Rob, yes, in response to Bard, I would have loved to have been on board this project 2 years ago. You guys know where to bill me for my water, you know where to tax me. No one said boo to me about the sidewalk. I've owned that building for 2+ years now. So obviously everyone else knew about it, but no one's told the people involved. I heard the same theme last week about the $11 million gateway trail that we're proposing. Business people own the houses on the actual property line weren't informed until like the week before. And it's another project's been what, 2, 3, 4 years in the works? Yeah, right? So I mean, I just don't, where's this breakdown of communication? I get a tax bill, I get a water bill, but I don't get any information about anything going on around the property. So I would have come here 2 years ago and started talking about this. I just found out about it a month ago, so we had to act quick and make a statement because it was just brought to our attention.
So it's a fair point. I'll just observe that the agendas are published, but you'd have to pay attention. You have to be a
Gateway
student of
project,
town
what's
government.
that doesn't tell anyone what's going on.
So, and I would defer to our planning and zoning staff about how they communicated specific things. Dave told me that they did reach out to property owners. You're shaking your head, and here I am, you're saying no, they're saying yes.
Well,
I
they
don't
never
know
notified
how to
me.
make sense of
Show
it.
me, please, letter you sent me, an email, anything. I've gotten nothing from the city until about a month ago.
How?
Town, sorry. Town. Apologize.
You say this so great.
It's village, yes.
Aaron on Zoom?
So I think we're back to like our solutions and our alternatives, right? Are we talking about solutions now? Okay. So I do think that you could consider putting a sign on the first 1 or 2 parking spaces on, I guess it would be the north side of the crosswalk between Sweet Simone's and the bank. That said like compact car parking only or 15-minute parking. And I think another solution is that I think you should get in touch with the schools and find out what they are doing for education for walking and how to cross safely and all those things. I know when our kids were at the public school and we talked to them about that, they didn't really have any information about how to cross the road safely. That was something that we taught them as parents. And I think that's something that every kid should be learning. I remember when I was in school, that was like one of, stop, drop, and roll and how to cross the road. And it does not sound like those are things that are being taught. And they could just have not remembered it, but it sounds like that's something that maybe we need to work on the outreach, especially for kids, because you can't run into the road. We live in a spot where they've been told that since the minute they were born, but I think across the board, we need to be educating that better.
Thank you, Aaron. Morgan?
Yes, just I'm curious about, hearing Rob saying nobody contacted him. I know Sidewalk came up about 2 years ago, I think, in our annual town meeting, and there was conversation back then. And it's difficult, unless you're following every select board or the committee meetings, it is difficult to follow. But needless to say, I piped in tonight and about the select board or about the sidewalk, and then heard that there's a petition that was signed and presented by, I'm not sure who the 200 people are. I don't know how many of them actually live in the town and walk the town as much as a lot of the people that live in the town. But where the sidewalk is supposed to go in front of your board, your building, Rob, is that your property or is that the town property?
It's a little of both.
So I've and I empathize or sympathize with you because I've had towns take 2/3 of a parking lot of a building that I used to own, and I was just told to go pound sand. That's just the way it is. Got compensated for it, but I can't help but to think, you know, when that was a restaurant, we all parked behind that restaurant there, or we walked to town. I was able to had the luxury of being able to walk down there, cross there. But I can't help to feel like the only solution is not to put a sidewalk in front of that building. Has anybody even approached Buttermilk about, or have you approached Buttermilk about parking behind your building there? I assume that's who owns the parking there behind your building.
Yes, but that's not the. I've lived in this town for 15 years. There's always been parking in front of that building. I parked there to go to that restaurant many a nights back when it was a restaurant. I parked there now to go service the building because I'm in charge of it. This whole thing with the sidewalk, that hill going up to the bank, I don't know how you're gonna deal with that, because it's gonna be such a steep slope that no one's gonna be able to, you have to put stairs in basically. And you gotta ruin the bank's parking, the wall for the bank's gonna get ruined. That whole geometry, that parking lot's gonna get ruined. You're taking up 2 handicap spots down by the town's hall, which people need to go to the library, not to mention the cemetery, which we all know is a hot topic too. So there's just so much going on with this project that doesn't make sense. You're taking away parking spots. That's 4 handicap spots, I think I just counted. They're going away in downtown Richmond, which is in desperate need of parking because it's a 40 square mile town. So, I mean, I don't know what, I mean, we tried our hardest to work with the committee to make some sort of reasonable solution, which I thought we could do still, and they just kept shutting it down. I was willing to give away, change my stairs, give up my land as right away, so we could have like a little like pull through with a couple spots, either diagonally or in parallel with the building. You put the stairs at either end of the porch. So we've done everything we can since I found out about this. Which is literally 2 months ago, maybe. I've been to every single select board meeting since then.
Right. Yeah, it's no doubt it's a difficult situation. It shouldn't impact your business, but
We tried to work with them, and it was impossible.
Is that
Speaking of the
some
railroad.
info here? The transportation committee, are you referring to us?
No, I'm actually referring to Keith Osborne, but yeah. Pretty much.
Okay, so no, the transport, just for everybody's reference, the transportation committee does not do any traffic engineering, design, etc. That is all done by paid professionals. So I think you remember when you came to the committee, and I was pushing for alternatives that fit the needs of Richmond community, of the community kitchen, because having those spaces is important.
Back to solutions and.
Thank you.
Virginia Clark's, I don't mean to switch subjects, but. Back to solutions and then Virginia Clark's comments about, and Jay's comments about, let's do some of the quick fixes or the inexpensive, do something now, why wait 5 more years to put some solutions in place? There are budget line items, multiple budget line items where there is extra money, and there has been for the past 5 to 10 years. It's called unallocated funds that were not spent on a yearly basis that we were taxed for. So those funds have built up to the point where they are now supplementing and putting those funds back into the budget as revenue. There's still excess funding there, and they're going to find at the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, that there's going to be some extra money there again. So between the line items that aren't being spent in FY24 and the line items that are already budgeted for FY25, there is plenty of money to do the painted sidewalks, the additional signs, the additional lighting, these basic things that we're talking about, even the change of the surface. Thank you. This change of the surface of the crosswalks. There is money in the budget for FY25, and there is leftover money from FY24. So we should not have to wait, and we should not have to raise the budget for FY26. And there's even money for the maintenance.
Jean?
And maybe we could assign some of that to these type of improvements, and then it wouldn't be such a stretch, I think, for people to think we're using that money for, because let's designate some of that for
pedestrian safety.
I think it goes,
improvements.
they've already got it in the budget. It's already been designated. $10,000 is already in the budget to deal with this, to start with.
So we're just not using it.
Correct. Correct.
We have used it on, I think we bought some reflective. Part of it went to the speed bumps, both the temporary and the permanent ones. Part of it went to the radar, the rapid flashing crosswalks, and there's a few other projects in there, but those are three that come to mind.
The different striping.
Right. We have used it. Maybe we haven't used all 10,000 every year, but we have used portions of
We
it.
got the speed signs that don't work with it.
Yep.
Yep.
So
I mean, I'm not judging you guys. It's not your fault they didn't work.
right.
They look nice in the catalog.
They-
Jean?
Jean Bressar. I'm wondering if we can't some way delineate the village as we're defining it, what for traffic, so that, you know, kind of like a welcome to our village, now please slow down in some way, whether it's by these delineations that go out into the, a little bit into the roadway, or that we really clearly define this is the village, this is where we have pedestrians, and that, you know, it makes it clear when people are driving through here, they're coming into an actual village, and that we value that people are walking and biking through here.
There's certain expectations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when you enter this
absolutely.
village.
Yeah. I think that the ARPA committee had it on their list for beautification. Beautification was on the ARPA committee's list along with welcome signs, welcome to the town, because there's only one sign coming into this town from all the different directions, and that's coming from, I mean, I think there's one over at a fire station, there was something there.
There used to
I'm just
be.
saying, so it's welcome sign.
But if we can clearly define where the village is that we're talking about here, in terms of pedestrian safety. Space.
Yep.
I'm struck by what the gentleman said about structures being the thing that really works. And the problem with structures is money, you know, structures.
Upfront plus maintenance.
But they're also much more permanent, you know, and if there is leftover ARPA money, it would seem to me that a permanent structure is a worthwhile investment of those types of funds. So I think you shouldn't be limited to, you know, what's cheap and easy. You should be thinking also about, you know, what's going to have a lasting impact as well. And we do have some monies for that, those kinds of expenses.
Rod?
Thank you, David. A few things, responses to things. I did talk to Pete this morning about the sidewalk, and he thought that there were, on the east side of Bridge Street, he thought there were some pretty insurmountable problems with crossing the railroad, like where the crossing sign was and some other utilities there. And I'm heartened to hear that the select board had decided earlier that probably the sidewalk on the east side was a non-starter at this point, given public reaction. It did have the advantage, the way it was drawn, of narrowing Bridge Street, which gets into what we were just talking about hard stuff and structures, really making a difference about how people drive and the speed that they travel. I recognize that putting a bump out on the west side of Bridge Street at the crossing by the bank there would be kind of a non-starter for Pete, because it's very difficult for him already to clear the street. But that would be something that would really make a big difference. Speaking about textured crosswalks, the ones in Williston Village that they used to have there, that process is done by heating the pavement, jamming a pattern down into it to create the cobblestone look, and then painting it. So it's not like somebody's got to dig up all the pavement and put down cobblestones. I don't know what it costs, but it is a little bit easier than it might have appeared. And the one last thing is flexible delineators are, Jay, they're great in some ways. We used to have them on Bridge Street in the middle of the street. People hit them on the regular, and we weren't able to maintain them, probably because of too much truck traffic. I don't know exactly why. And that does leave me that one last thing. The trucks don't just service Cumberland Farms, they service the restaurants. And over the years, it's gotten crazy because the delivery companies want to use a tractor trailer so that they can get more product and get somebody out on a route longer. It used to be that they were in straight trucks and it worked much better. We are stuck with some access problems. You know, ideally, the alley behind the Bridge Street block would actually be accessible to those tractor trailers, but there is no way they can get into there. The backs of the businesses through that tight curve on Depot Street at this point. So I don't know if there's ever going to be a solution to having trucks blocking. I'm sure that they try very hard to get through and out quickly. And there are many trucks that do come really early in the morning before businesses and the restaurants are even open. So I don't think the merchants are unaware of that problem. They're trying, but there's only so much they can do given needing to get stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Aaron Wag.
Hi. Hey, I was just wondering if the that lighted blinking crosswalk that is hard to see when there's trucks and stuff parked on the Hatchet side of the road, could that sign just actually be extended up higher so it's above the trucks, so it's a little easier to see?
That's a good thought.
Yeah.
So write that down.
Pedestrians need to be taller too.
Probably code for that. Probably code for that of some sort.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to the pedestrians again. And this is about the pedestrians, and I think the vehicular traffic is definitely an issue, and those suggestions should be employed at some point. But I think immediately what comes to mind is a more immediate fix or trying to actually make something happen is to just properly delineate where we want pedestrian traffic to go. So think about the pedestrian more than the cars. Where do we want them to travel? Not to go into the whole east side sidewalk, but my thought there was if there was a sidewalk there, then you're going to have more people crossing at places where you don't want them to cross, because it happens all the time. People run across where there isn't a crosswalk. So you keep people on one side for now, make the current crosswalks visible, do what we can to slow the traffic with regards to a speed limit sign, do something to delineate that really dangerous spot where people come down Bridge Street and cross over the railroad tracks, even if it's just that initial part. I think working with that property owner in some way that isn't a permanent fixture, something that is more beautiful, friendly versus sort of construction-like, I think is going to be more appealing. It's going to feel better. And I think working with where do we want the people to go, focusing on that to me seems like it's not as expensive right now and something that we could really execute more immediately. While the traffic issues are key and critical, those bigger expensive things might be something more long-term, but let's not wait to address the other things while those things are being considered.
So David, follow up. And I construe by that, you mean clearer crosswalks, like cross here where it's more obvious to pedestrians, and then by extension would also be more obvious to vehicles. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like maybe there is something we could do that is more beautiful with a hanging flower pot, or something that kind of identifies the crosswalk with not more construction signs, not more fluorescent green signs, but something that says this is the crosswalk. Having it painted more frequently, making sure that the lights actually work. You know, again, I think the Cumberland Farm, talking to the state and fixing the timing of the light at Route 2 so that there is perhaps a time when it's just pedestrian only walking. Yeah, that seems like a phone call, not any money, something that could work right away. I love the idea of working on, I don't know if it's the town or the school or encouraging the idea of the old school crosswalk volunteer for 45 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon for Route 2. Be awesome. Those are all things that could encourage the pedestrian safety that we need like right now.
How about painting them blue or something? I mean, in Williston, when I drive through Williston, those green line bands for the bicycles really make you pay attention. You know, and the green line will cross when there's going to be a right turn lane. You know, you really notice that it stands out. It's not just a white other line on the road. So I don't know, maybe having them blue or green. Well, green may mean bicycles. I don't know, but green maybe, but something that really shows up.
Something day glow.
Where I said orange.
Eric McGuire, on that point, like, isn't there like reflective paint, not
Yes.
day glow, but you know what I mean? So not, so more maintenance on it and then actually having the kind that's reflective. I'm thinking especially at night.
It just wears off much faster.
Doesn't.
Paint it more frequently.
But again, I think you see, the point is to make it, when people are driving through, that it is a feeling that you want to stop versus, you know, emergency, you know, it should feel, I think we can do that in our town. We're not a city. We're a town, we're a village where people need to pass through to get to work, and it's not a highway. And if people choose to come through and it feels slow, then it's slow. That's what it is.
So I guess circumferential highway is off the.
We won't go there.
Then
Jeff?
they can, you know, I mean, in Scandinavia, there are towns, when you come into a little town, there's a sign that says you are entering Richmond, or it just says, Richmond, welcome to Richmond. You come in and immediately after that sign, you slow down, or there is an enormous fine because it is understood that every town, people are on bicycles and walking, and that's what they want. And we can do that without it being, we can do that. We have that ability here.
We have
you know.
technology.
But we have, it's not even technology, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking that the town can get behind.
Jeff?
So I've seen in Burlington these crosswalks that are like three-dimensional painting.
Oh, Trump oil stuff.
And they really freak you out. I mean,
Once.
Yeah,
right.
You know, but you know, I hear in Europe and some places, they actually have pictures on the pavement that are three-dimensional. You know, like a kid in the middle of the road or something. I don't know. There's something, you know, in the middle of the road, boulder, that really slow people down. That's just a fun idea.
Jared Cassian, I'm just curious. I was just in Montpelier a couple of days ago. State Street is a long, wide, boulevard-like street. Nobody speeds on it.
Yeah.
You know, crosswalks, 5 million of them, it seems like. They're everywhere. And pedestrians crossing right, left, and center.
It's great.
And Main Street, the same thing. Nobody speeds. Why? I don't know.
Nobody's there.
Well, but you could on State Street.
There's no doubt about parking.
You could go like a bat out of hell on on State Street, except for something. And I don't know what the something is, because there's a big gold dome, or has there been enough enforcement in the past, or the fines steeper so that the risk is so great, no one wants to do it? I don't know.
Yes, right ticket for speeding. Good.
Maybe.
That's what should happen.
Generate revenue.
Yes.
Yeah, there's an effect similar in a town called Lyons, Colorado. It's outside of Boulder. It's the gateway to get up to Rocky Mountain National Park. And the speeding enforcement in their village, so it's multi-lane roads. and it's 25 miles per hour. And if you weren't convinced that there was always going to be a cop there, you would go 40, 45. But they made it so regular and so embarrassingly predictable that if you were going over the speed limit there, that you would get a ticket, but the only people getting tickets in Lyons, Colorado are tourists. So obviously we do not have the person power to do such a thing, but with targeted enforcement, it could be a scenario that we create where, oh, you don't speed in Richmond Village because they're gonna give you a speeding ticket.
Spread the word on Front Porch.
Yeah.
So Charlotte, Heidi Warren, so Charlotte has a cute sign that says stop at the stop sign is free.
Yes.
Rolling stops are 250, your choice.
Yeah.
We could make a funny kind of sign of your choice, speeding in Richmond, you know, a play on that sort of thing, to make it not harsh, but we need, you know.
I'm having stickers made.
Angela?
Mine's probably a question for Chief Cambridge. I don't know what the state of Vermont's laws are for camera and automated ticketing for traffic enforcement and ordinances that are related to speeding. So I have no idea what that is, but what's happening is with the declining manpower is we're getting to the point where we're automating a lot of things. Just saying, we're automating a lot of things. So a nice sign with a big bouquet of flowers is great. Please slow down. But then that $250 at the end, your choice kind of thing. But we got your license plate and we got a photo of the driver.
So David, I know you're not a personal fan of this because of your personal experience, but this did come up in the past about could we do this? And we were told it's not possible under the current Vermont statutes. That said, we had exactly this conversation some time ago that with our demographics workforce, why put a person out there intermittently when you could have a machine out there 24/7? And it would seem to me that there is an incentive for the state or the legislature to change the law over time.
Yeah, I think we're
And
there.
so that I would say as an action item, this is follow up with our legislators again about, is there a way to change this? We could pilot it, you know, but it makes a lot of sense for all the things you just said in.
There was a Senate bill, Senate 184, in the legislature this year, and it was meant to explicitly authorize automated speeding cameras. The governor signed it. So I haven't read the whole bill because it's a 26-page long bill, but they actually apparently it might be possible now.
That's probably effective July 1st. So that's a follow-up about what does it say and are we allowed to do it as a town?
I don't want to scare anybody, and it might just be a coincidence, but twice, well, if I was driving on Route 2, a car ran the red light on 117, and when it went through the intersection, there was a strobe. So could have been coincidence, but maybe they're already implementing that technology.
There are cameras up there,
Yeah.
sure.
For upgrades on our state roads.
So let's see if it's a follow-up. What does the statute say and can we do it ourselves?
And just to piggyback on that, do either of the statutes say anything about that? It has to be a police officer that hands out the ticket. Again, to bring it back to Colorado, they do have private companies that are contracted with towns that it is not a machine, but it's actually a van that will go out and park in certain locations. And the law in Colorado is that it has to be marked. So typically there's a sign that says photo speed enforcement ahead. So I don't know if that's an option, but that could be potential. It works with Heinsberg, Wilson, et cetera, other neighboring towns.
The law basically targets speeding around work zones. You can do automated speeding ticket cameras in work zones, not anywhere else.
We've always got.
That's all of our.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
the other side.
Sign up?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We put the sign up? It's the sign up.
Or the strobe.
They got a little-
But auto sports,
Sure, you got your window.
and just put a sign up and see.
We'll start a project and never finish it.
I'd say there's a pothole that just never is done.
Randomly with a little strobe now.
Could avoid giving back the sidewalk money too, if we started the project and never finished it.
Forever delayed sidewalk project.
Well, so even if we're not allowed, I think that foot in the door, we should not give up our pursuit of a
Mhm.
logical end, which is to use machines.
Yeah.
To offset the demand on humans.
And again, I think that our town, culturally, I love the idea of our town supporting the concept of the pedestrian bike movement and transportation versus threatening people who come to town that you can't do this in our town. We just want to say, this is what we do here. So there's a consequence, but not a threat, right? So like, I think our town, we want our town to be supportive of this is what we do here. And if you come here, you know, this is what we do here.
A follow-up comment. I've heard Chris Cole and many others say that the way to influence behavior is primarily through the built environment and secondarily through enforcement. And it's not just speed signs, but as we've heard, the sort of physical changes to the roadway, lane widths. Some places are doing, like parts of Burlington have these pop-outs where you kind of have to slow down because it's so narrow.
Such a pinpoint.
So those are all efforts to change the built environment to influence the driver behavior predominantly, but also to make it safer for pedestrians crossing.
Burlington also, as most pop outs, has incorporated natural water runoff areas, which is kind of cool.
Really?
Like sort of when the water flows off the sidewalk, goes into like a rocky little pond, kind of like in those pop out.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
There it goes.
We never go to it on Stoke Hollow Road too. We've got
Caution, flash flooding.
Yeah.
Right? Bridge, right? Bridge is unstable, you go more 25. You just lie right in like it works.
Yeah, it does.
Oh my gosh.
My kids were little. Every time we went over an old bridge, I told them to lift their feet to make the load less.
So David, what's your next step with these solutions that people have tossed out here?
That's a good question. This is a brainstorming session. Once I'll put that.
What I would do is I would compile the list into something a little more coherent, nothing against Josh, but these have been coming fast and furious. Put them in front board forums so the entire town can read them.
Yeah.
We don't have a town Facebook page. Some towns do. We don't have somebody who would have the time to keep one up to date, but we could put it on the Richmond Police Facebook page, which we do have one of.
Times Inc.
Times Inc. Yeah, but I mean, people need some time to think about these, but I think we've heard a lot of good suggestions tonight.
I'm going to suggest also we put it on another select board agenda.
Definitely.
And spend some time on it. You know, one of the things I heard are the things that should be affordable and actionable in the relatively near term, whether it's our town staff or contractors, to make some of these changes to pavement, striping, painting.
Lighting.
I think I really like the word stop and the line drawn, because for the new drivers or even, you know, people who need to know where to stop, you know, because sometimes like the round church, I know we're going back to that, but that's an example, but you can use Church Street, you can use whatever street you want, is you don't know exactly where to stop with the stop sign. Sometimes they're turned at an angle, and it's just, if you had that line that says stop, your new drivers are also learning to stop there. Just like I love your fog lines, it's helping those new drivers as well.
And the old drivers.
And the older drivers, I've been wanting to list that for you, David, but yeah, as you say.
Okay, going on Zoom, the Aaron's. Let's start with Aaron Wag and then Aaron Farr.
Hey, I was just wondering, how come we don't use our own webpage to post stuff like this? Like, why do we depend always on the Front Porch Forum?
People look at Front Porch Forum every day.
Not everybody.
Not everybody, though. You're right. There's no reason why we should do only one. We should try to get these to as many places as possible. And the town website, the thing is, we've dedicated the town website, the top half of the page, to a certain look and feel, and people have to scroll down to see the updates. That said, if we publicize that updates will be always found at this link, people might go there more often.
That's
Aaron
right.
Farr?
Two things. The first thing was Penny was talking about making the town feel more like it's a downtown, it's a pedestrian area. I was wondering about, we used to have those signs that hung from the telephone poles.
Mhm.
I do feel like when you drive into a town and you're not from somewhere, when you see something like that, or like right now we have the American flags, but those I do think help sort of alert drivers to the fact that they are in the downtown area. So that might be something to consider putting back up. And another thing about putting this on Front Porch Forum or on the next select board meeting agenda, I do think, to the point that was made earlier, that sometimes, I don't want to say they're hidden on purpose, but sometimes when I read through the agendas of things, like I completely missed the sidewalk expansion through the gateway because it was just written as a gateway scoping study. So I didn't know that pertained specifically to sidewalks. I thought it pertained to probably the housing that we had been talking about for many years. I think that writing very clearly what we're talking about is a good thing when you're advertising isn't the right word, but posting on Front Porch Forum, you know, like continued discussion of the sidewalks in downtown. Because I do think that people don't always, if you're not watching all the meetings, you don't always know what the kind of code words are for things, and you can miss them. And I personally watch a ton of meetings. I watch select board meetings like their podcasts, and I completely missed that other sidewalk discussion because I just hadn't picked up on it.
You know.
Thanks for watching, Aaron.
Yeah, no problem.
I didn't pick up on it either. It was called Weston Gateway Scoping Study. We didn't know what.
So look,
it is.
I try to make these agenda items, like I seriously try not to use acronyms. I try to be very descriptive. I totally missed a boat on that. I've heard it more than a dozen times. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, but I really try to, I do try to like put in exactly what we're talking about.
Just you.
Like.
And I wasn't
God.
trying to be mean, but I
It's a warning.
But I'm just, for the last week, I've heard it at least a dozen times, and I just want to say, I really tried to make agenda items clear. I clearly missed the vote last week, and I'm sorry.
Just brief, John, just brief.
But I'm just like, it just keeps coming, so I'm just like, I really try not to do like, you know, ARPA when I can spell it out.
Apologies, but I think with regards to that though, I think there are, I know there are more people who would like to chime in, and they can't attend all the meetings. They just don't, for whatever reason. And I think it is, to get that feedback, I think it's important to somehow to maybe specify sometimes so that those people who want to know, when is that pertinent time to speak up on certain things? I think that's really, because for someone to come to a meeting like this and say something and then feel like I can't go to 4-hour meetings or 3-hour meetings, which of course, we know all of you guys are doing an amazing job with all that, but you don't want to deter people. And I think there would be more people speaking up if they kind of knew the window that would be a good time on a very specific project or whatever.
Do a better job getting that message out. Publishing the agenda by itself and is not enough if people are like select board agenda.
It's
But
overwhelming.
Right, but if you were to say, notice to residents, we will be discussing this. I don't know, make the subject line something. Something else we could do though, to get more feedback from people who, there are people who will never come to one of these meetings because they don't drive after dark. They don't get out well, is we could put on the town website a Google form that lists these options and then has an open-ended box for citizen comment. I mean, it would take Duncan or I 10 minutes to get one of those online. When we did the ARPA survey, we also supplemented it by having a Dropbox for cards in various places around town, and we did postcards. I don't know if we need to go to that length, but I do feel that on certain topics, we do need to do it as vigorous a job as we can to solicit input from the widest group of people. Because otherwise we wind up with these silos, and somebody comes along and goes, well, why didn't you think of this? We go, and they go, well, I never knew I was supposed to. So
Well, you're always going to have some of that.
You always will,
There
but-
could be there could be I think a little bit,
Right.
again, I don't have the solution right at the top of my head.
Well, I
but
mean-
something that would be more enticing for people if they could only
Right, well,
come for an hour, or if they only
Right.
could write it in, or if they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big thing is, I mean, I've got a bunch of emails in the last 5 months or whatever, and I've read every single one of them and read them multiple times and taken everything into consideration. And if there's any need to have any back and forth, just like a conversation or anything, it's easy because both people can do it on their own time, and it's not the pressure of coming and sitting in front of the
Right.
the select board and stuff. And so I appreciate that. So if you know anyone who wants to, it's not the best method for everyone to communicate. Doesn't work for a lot of people, but if someone's willing to send us an email, I mean,
Yeah, and we can decide.
We
to
read 'em
split it
all.
If we need.
yeah, and I always at least thank people for sending it. It's like, yeah, I've read this. Like, thank you for sending it. That's a good option too.
David, I'm just gonna note that it's after 9 o'clock, and while we established 9 o'clock, not capriciously, perhaps arbitrarily, but a 9 o'clock end time, and we could talk for another hour or two. To the point that was made earlier, we could turn this into a 4-hour meeting, and I recommend that we do not.
9 PM and select board time means 11.
I hear, I hear you.
Yeah, I hear you too.
On behalf of Amy and myself, we really want to thank you very much for having this meeting, because this came from the unexpected outcome of the sidewalk and all of that stuff. And this conversation has been amazing. And you've been so receptive, listening to what everybody, we're talking about creative ways to reach more people in town so that they know what's going on. And yeah, I just, thank you.
I second that one. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, good.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, either virtually or in person, and facilitating this. This was an open conversation. There were a lot of differing opinions, a lot of differing ideas. And again, I've said this many times before, but I'm proud to say it again. I love living in a community that's so appreciative and so cooperative as we are. And I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Chairman. I'm, we adjourn.
No, we have more.
You're not done yet. We have a purchase order.
Okay, more?
Oh.
Oh, no.
Just the purchase order. I don't have a,
I can't see it.
I don't have a motion in the memo. Just need a motion to approve purchase order.
I can't read it.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This is Bart. David, I'd like to move that we approve purchase order number 4930 to EJ Prescott for an amount not to exceed $15,266.55.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion was made by Bart Hill, seconded by Jay Fur, and third by Lisa Miller. Any discussion on this before approval?
Drainage pipe, what's not to like?
Oh, this is for the Tilden Ave project. And we're trying to buy all the materials in this fiscal year and get it. We'll get it constructed soon.
So calling the motion to a vote, this is a motion to approve purchase order 4930 to EJ Prescott in an amount not to exceed $15,266.55 for drainage materials for the Tilden Avenue pipe project.
Bart, aye.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye.
David, aye. Motion carries. Thank you,
Chairman, I move we adjourn.
This is Bart. I will second that motion.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Bart. Calling the motion to a vote.
Bart, aye.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
David, aye. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
I've got one to look.